Love it.
So yes, this is episode 6 of the Sirens Project podcast. Do not have a name for this episode yet, but we have the awesome Carly Sisson.
Hello.
2 Storms and Radar Omega.
Yes.
And her Carly
general
Ann
YouTube fame.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
Which
thanks.
we'll
That's
put a
generous.
link in the description, obviously, for your YouTube channel.
Yes.
Anything.
But we're super excited to have you. And
I'm so excited to be here. I've been a fan of y'all forever, for a couple years, and we've all been in Georgia. I've been here since 2018, so we've talked a couple times since then, but this is the first time we've actually got together.
That's not a testament to how complicated Atlanta is, truthfully. Like, you're not that far
There's
away
no
as the
better
crow
testament.
flies, but like, there's traffic, there's construction,
It's
schedules.
unbelievable.
tornadoes.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, you have to be like within 10, 15 miles of each other to be like, okay, we'll make it happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And so to get this started, I'm going to ask the icebreaker question again.
Okay,
Yeah.
ask the icebreaker question.
Let's do it.
All right. So if you could witness any tornado event safely,
Okay.
disregard all the impacts, right?
Right.
Just the tornado.
No
'Cause you're going
impacts.
to get skewered for asking this question.
Right,
Yeah.
right. They're going to nitpick it. You
I
want
know.
all those people to die?
But
again? Like,
what
no.
about
Yeah, no. Just the tornado, witnessing it. What event would that be?
Mine is my freak obsession event, which is Gerald. It was my first video ever. I've always been fascinated with the more macabre events, transparently, events that are shrouded in mystery and have weird elements about them. So Gerald kind of ticks all those boxes for me, always has. It was a tiny rope tornado to a massive wedge in a couple seconds. The dead men walking is always fascinating and odd. I love the Native American legends. And then how slow it turned. I mean, there's so many different elements of that was just weird and, catastrophic, but I would love to see
even
that
down
one.
to the meteorological aspect of Gerald, because I know it was like a southeast moving.
Yes, and it was a boundary.
southwest,
It was
sorry,
like a
southwest,
boundary interaction that essentially,
Right.
I think they think it was a gravity wave sort of interaction that kind of just helped it along, which is very
like
interesting.
initially, like you said, it was like a rope, looked like a land spout almost, and then just sat
And
over
the
a
view, I mean, there was a
neighborhood
couple views that were taken of that recording, sorry,
Right.
Yeah.
that you could just see the whole thing, and it just this to this in a couple seconds.
And one thing I watched some of your videos. You touched on Gerald, some of like the tornado lore. That was a really cool video. I didn't know that Glenn Powell. I thought it was so cool that Glenn Powell.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, it's great. Glenn Powell. Well, he saw the Gerald tornado. Right?
Yeah,
Or
he
it's
was like with his aunt or something,
way.
and maybe a cousin, and they lived like really close to or in Gerald, and they had to drive. They were like driving from maybe the aunt's house back home or something like that, where they basically were really close to it. Yeah.
Way.
And then he plays in Twisters.
Nobody was a better fit for that role.
No, really.
Powell. Yeah.
And he's pretty handsome, man. So.
Yeah. I think I got one of my first, well, maybe not the Gerald video, but one of my first hate comments was from that. I wore pink in one of my very first videos. People were like, you cannot talk about this in pink. And that was, that's probably one of my favorite ones so far.
That's hilarious.
That was a good one.
People are
funny.
weird on the
Yeah.
internet.
Love them.
Yeah, that's
People
weird.
are so weird. Give somebody a keyboard.
Right.
Yeah.
They're invincible. How about you, Daniel? What's yours?
I say I was going to deflect back to you. But since that we've time warped now.
Yeah, it feels like Groundhog Day.
Gosh. Okay, so the one I was gonna say is Newnan, Georgia.
Right.
That was 2020.
21.
Was that 21 already?
2021.
Wow.
Wow. God. So you and I talked a lot that day and that evening about the fact that you had kind of had a gut feeling because it was outside the
High risk
area, but had kind of a gut feeling something was coming that direction.
Yeah.
And we talked about that, and I remember I was about to go to bed. Like I had gotten in the bed, kind of shut my phone off, and you called or texted me and was like, Newnan, getting hit now.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward, we went down there like by noon the next day, we were in Newnan. And so we did like multiple days, multiple weekend trips down there.
All the way to a year later.
All the way to
Wow.
a year later. I mean, we focused on, might as well have called it the Newnan Project for like a year.
Yeah.
But that hit home because, if you live in Atlanta, somebody who lives in Newnan, or Newnan's just a well-known town. But
City of trees.
it was also
Used to be.
Interesting.
was one of those places where where we saw not only the immediate aftermath, but the year later aftermath.
That's fascinating.
The progress.
So what I would want to go back and see is like, all right, I want to see with night vision
drone shot.
with all the radar map. Maybe you can make a documentary about this.
Yeah.
I want to see Newnan from the front end perspective. How did it become what it was? And if I could see it without any impact on the devastation, is understand its path through. Because I mean, if you think about it, it went through those heavily forested areas on the southwest end of town, then went over Newnan High School. You remember the building?
The whole building shifted on its foundation. They had to demolish the Newnan High School. Yeah, it was crazy. It was deemed unsafe.
It was built in like the 1920s.
I'd seen the new one. I went down there like a year after and saw in the tree. Of course, the trees are still, broken off. And
it was wild. And just like watching, there's an apartment complex. Remember the apartment complex on the bend of the road with the huge mansion on this side?
Right.
And like there was this apartment complex that had been completely defaced. And we literally drove in and you could see people's bedrooms as they were last night.
That's pretty wild.
I would want to see the front end of that.
Right. Was it rain wrapped or like could it have been visible?
We need a 3D volumetric to get the visualization of what that looked like.
There you go. Exactly. All right. So
what's yours?
For me, I've seen some pretty decent tornadoes that I wouldn't mind seeing again, like the Bennington, Kansas, May 28th. Yeah, 2013. That was a good one. But honestly, without the devastation, I'd probably like to see Hackleburg. From the super outbreak in 2011.
Grungy.
I don't know, man. Just something about that tornado. It's just gnarly. And probably one of the more powerful tornadoes in recent history. So that whole day fascinates me. But probably Hackleburg.
And your first chase.
My first chase.
Which is unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. It was something. It was kind of like thought maybe all storm chases were that
cool.
intense. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, is this what it's like
This is what storm chasers do all the time.
Yeah. So hopefully we never see that again.
Your tri-state tornado would have been a good one too.
That would have been nice.
Very historical. No photos, nothing.
Yeah. I hope one day technology gets good enough to where, I'm sure you've seen like Lee Orff's like high resolution,
yes,
the
those
blue
are
water supercomputer, like supercell, things.
That's got to come soon.
Right. Like if you could just type in the old, this date, tri-state tornado, whatever, and then have a full real-time length simulation of that entire tornado.
There's
or something.
AI for that.
Cool. It's coming.
It's coming.
But yeah.
God, I would really want to see that.
Yeah.
It's visualization.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get into weather? I'm sure you've answered that question a million times.
Like any other person, it usually starts at childhood, I feel like. It's either fear or fascination or maybe some combination of the two. Mine was more fear-based for sure. And I love the Weather Channel growing up, the documentaries, always loved those. But no one else in my life ever cared about storms, so I always sort of kept that with me, I thought it was a little weird. But I always carried that with me. I never pursued it academically until I guess a couple things happened. The first was that I went through a nocturnal tornado. I was 18. I was working a horrible factory job at the time, and I just remember like being in this factory. No one really cared. They're like, everyone casually go to the bathroom. This nocturnal tornado's coming through. And I thought, well, I'll be squished like a bug. And that stuck with me for sure. That solidified the fear. And then I ended up moving to Georgia for college in 2018. Finished college. And as soon as I finished college, the pandemic happens. And the bookstore that I managed closed down. So it was like, well, if there was ever a time for me to nerd out and be a freak about weather, I guess I'll start, a channel. And it was extraordinarily therapeutic for me to talk about severe weather events. It was very healing for me to learn about meteorology. It empowered me in a way that I never thought possible to overcome that fear just by learning more about how tornadoes form, why they form, what elements are more dangerous for bigger days. So that helped me a lot, and I guess it resonates with other people as well, just talking about the human element, which you guys do as well. And I think it really just resonates with people. A lot of times I think the meteorology community gets caught up in numbers and sort of hyperbole and exaggerating certain things and focusing on how crazy events are and the news cycle. But really, at the end of the day, the human element is what is so powerful and impactful. And that's what you guys definitely bring to the table too. So
That's awesome.
sorry, that was a long-winded way.
No,
Great.
it's perfect. It's perfect.
Right.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
We talk about that a lot. Like when
you
we
guys
show
do,
up, when we show up, just and we were talking about it before we started this today, but just when we show up and we're meeting the people that are affected, it really hits home.
Yeah.
In two ways for us, where it's like, oh, thank God it didn't happen to us, which is what everybody does when this happens. There's always that kind of selfish, immediate thought, but then like, okay, we're here to help.
Yeah.
How can we bless these people? How can we take care of them? Because they're in a need, you know, they're in a time of need now.
Yeah.
Every single person we run into has a different need.
Yeah.
And it's emotional. You know, you
Yeah.
get early on, we got very caught up in the emotion of it, but less so now. You just kind of
like we've like focused on tree work. That's like our
It's
bread
very
and
important,
butter.
especially in the Southeast. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of trees here, a lot of big trees.
Yeah.
But we always say like the trees are just like the vessel that we use to meet people in their needs. And it's just one way. It might be feeding somebody or picking up any kind of debris or whatever. It's just an opportunity for us to kind of break that barrier. So
it's huge. I think one of the things that I find most interesting about charity work in this space, in the weather space, cleaning up, you had said that you guys, you start off really emotional seeing these big impact events. Does it kind of go away, or do you have to compartmentalize when you see big events at some point? Or, I mean, how do you emotionally kind of go through that whole process? And I'm sure it's evolved from the time you started, but that's really interesting to me.
It is. I would say there's a little bit of compartmentalization, honestly.
Yeah.
You just, when we take a new volunteer out there, you kind of like see them go,
Yeah.
oh.
yeah, especially tornadoes versus. Hurricanes are bad too, but tornadoes are just like a different.
But that happened to me when we went to Laura, Hurricane Laura.
Yeah.
That was the first hurricane damage I'd ever worked on. And so getting down there, it took me, and I mean, we were well outside of Baton Rouge and already seeing the damage from there all the way into Lake Charles, and it was getting worse and worse. And I'm just like, I've never seen anything like this. I've driven down to the Gulf Coast and seen, maybe it's been 2 years and there's still some tarps on roofs or things like that, but never just seen it that live and
raw,
that brutal.
Yeah.
And I remember I filmed a lot of that. Like we'd be just driving in the car and I'm just like, got my camera out, and I've, you don't really go back and rewatch a lot of the things you film these days, but I'm like, it just helped me to kind of process it through like another lens.
Yeah.
Then it became more like kind of watching on TV versus the fact that I was actually looking at that. But it has definitely compartmentalized a lot. And now it becomes very quickly less about the damage. Yeah. I mean, the damage is what we're there to take care of. And now we feel like we're very good at that. It's more about how can we serve these people? What can we do to help them? Recognizing that what we do, but there's other things, like the other day, just giving James a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like we were going to Hardee's. We bought a bunch of cheeseburgers. We came back. Warren ate 2, by the way. And Leo was not happy that I fed you 2 cheeseburgers. But, and like the guy that was there, he takes care of his 94-year-old grandma. And that's his life. Yeah. And he's lived in the same area for his whole life. It's not a great, by our standards, it's not a life that you look at and you go, oh, that's what I want to do. Yeah. But I came back from Hardee's and I was like, James, he was the first person to kind of greet me. He was still standing over there. I was like, got you a cheeseburger. He's like, what? You didn't have to give me a cheeseburger, that's sweet, And I'm like, no, I did, because that's what you're supposed to. Yeah. We're here to help you, but you're helping us just by being here, supporting us. So it's really about connecting and helping ease a pain. Yeah. Because I mean, we were in South Carolina and that was how many months past Helene?
Like 5 months.
5 months later. They're still dealing with it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Still
5 months. Yeah. I can't even deal with a tree branch in my yard for 2 days.
Right. Yeah. It's like, for me, I guess, chasing tornadoes before doing this, that's kind of when I guess like the damage really affected me, or the damage and loss really affected me a lot more. Was seeing it, immediately after the fact.
It's so
kind of
violent,
thing.
so blunt. Yeah.
Right. And it was super raw and everything like that. Over the years, I feel like Daniel touched on, the damage and that sort of thing doesn't really affect me too much anymore. It's like, you've seen one house get blown away, you feel like you kind of seen a lot of houses blown.
Sure.
It's really comes down to individual people though, especially since having a son now, son's 8 months old. That hits a lot different now too. Like whenever we help a family that's got, like a small child or something like that, you're like, man, there's some emotion there that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
That I have now, and so I love the individual people, like Daniel was saying. It's everybody has a story, their whole life in some ways like kind of culminates at this one moment when they. For some people, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to them.
Sure.
Maybe not, but regardless, it is a point in their life that they will always look back and be like, remember that when the tornado hit, right? And it's in that moment. How we respond to that as people helping people, that kind of, to me, that's what defines that moment. And I love that aspect of just being part of somebody's story, in that moment, I think is cool.
It is really cool. I'm already an emotional person. That would be tough for me to, I would love to get more into charity work, like in a more tangible, physical way. I would be torn up all the time.
We can give you a saw.
It's a normal thing.
Yeah.
I'll do a saw. Yeah. Give me the axe.
You have to go through our
3-day training program.
But I'm not gonna lie. I've had moments where I just had tears coming down my eyes early on, and less now. It's more in those special moments that you have with people.
I love that you guys are able to focus more on the positivity rather than just the damage. I mean, it's rough, but I mean, if you're able to focus on the people, how can we serve you? How can we provide something for you? I think that's really
I think the cool factor wears off right about the time the news factor the news cycle passes. Then it's like, oh, look, the damage, and then everybody forgets.
That's what's so sad. That's what I really hate about the whole thing is that I understand it's the news cycle, but at the same time, it's like, well, people in North Carolina are still really going through it.
They are.
And
and Georgia.
And Georgia.
I mean, it's like, it's so devastating.
Yeah.
We just went back to Ray City, Georgia in January. It took 23 high schoolers down there with us from a private school and kind of got them involved. My wife is the one that called the homeowners initially and said, hey, we're planning on leading a team back down. And it was really interesting because they were so shocked by the phone call. They're like, we didn't think like anybody was like coming back. And there's hundreds of thousands of families, dozens of communities that feel that exact same way right now as we're filming this podcast. And it's overwhelming to us because obviously we want to try to help as many people as possible. So, I mean, even large organizations like Samaritan's Purse or Team Rubicon or some of these, monster organizations feel the same way because, we're still at the end of the day, trying to put a wildfire out. With
you can only do so much physically. Yeah,
it really is. I mean, there's so much. And, we get one of the hard things for us is that we have a lot of, we have a large network of people we know, and people immediately start calling. They start calling you.
Right.
And it's like, well, are you coming to North Carolina? Are you coming? And we just try to kind of focus on a in to out model. Like what happened right here around us and just kind of work our way out. So, initially Helene in North Carolina wasn't our scope because it's just like, it's a long way away. We feel for those people, but we were getting calls from people in, East Georgia that were like, hey, can you come help us here? And it's like, all right,
how do you,
that's our people, Georgia, and then work our way out. But, eventually get that far, but you can't take your mind off the fact that, like you said, people in North Carolina are still in the thick of this 5 months later.
Right.
And it's hard to think about.
It makes me sad to know that they just think that nobody's coming back.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah, it's we've kind of experienced that in Newnan too. Talking kind of like the processing side of things. We went to Newnan a year later to the date. We actually chose that weekend as for that kind of like a memorial anniversary. To go back, and there was still a lot of work to be done. A lot of the trees that appeared fine right after the tornado, succumbed to their injuries.
Yeah.
And so, we were removing those down there. But I remember,
And John was still down there.
John was
handling
still,
every work order.
every weekend they were doing stuff.
All he did for a year plus.
Man.
One guy basically in a small group of like a Bible study. They were down there doing tree work. But I think the first lady we helped when we came back that year later, she broke down, started crying, and just kind of relived it. I would say relived it, but it felt like the first time she had actually processed
I can't imagine. Yeah,
what had happened. It was like a year later, and that's one thing that we try to try to be sensitive to, is the fact that these people that we're helping even this far out may have not actually processed the storm yet. And so this is an opportunity just to we introduce ourselves, we start doing the work, and then we just listen. We try not to do a ton of talking. We let them, kind of process what they've been through. So
I've read some really good studies that most people don't process trauma like that. It was a study that was done, I think, specifically to Joplin, but it was most people don't process for at least 6 months, up to like 2.5 years after. And it's largely because people are so busy with the physical process of cleanup that they don't have time. It just goes way in the back of their brain. And then as soon as they get done with the cleanup, or part of it at least, so they can resume somewhat of a normal daily life, all of a sudden that's just going right to the front of their brain. And it's like, holy crap.
And gets triggered by some memory of something that's no longer there. So something happens, and all of a sudden,
they think they're back in a comfortable place and normalcy, it's like, okay, front of the brain, we got to address this now. Which is so sad.
Because a lot of times you think about the cleanup process goes on well afterwards. You don't read about it, you don't hear about it, but it's still going on, and they're still kind of in the trauma. I mean, the people that if you've had your house hit by a tree,
right,
and you're waiting on any help to come, insurance, whatever, you're still kind of in the trauma for a long period of time afterwards that you're dealing with that.
Do y'all think that most people have home insurance when you go out there? Do people even talk about that sort of element? Because I mean, the financial burden of taking care of the cleanup is massive too.
I would say so. We primarily focus on underserved, low income communities, and so a lot of those communities don't have insurance, or there are a lot of issues with, like, insurance is funny. It doesn't get triggered unless, especially with trees, it doesn't get triggered until like a certain part of the policy is affected. So if a tree never hits a structure, but it's, still down in your yard or whatever, and still a hazard, safety hazard, insurance is not going to cover that. You can activate other parts of your policy if, depending on how it's written out, if a tree's blocking a driveway or something like that. Usually insurance only kicks in once a structure has been impacted by the tree. So, a lot of times the people have insurance. If we've, exhausted our resources trying to locate people that don't have insurance and that sort of thing, a lot of times the people that we're helping have insurance, but
doesn't cover.
It's not even covered under what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Also, in a lot of states, once you don't have a mortgage on the house, you don't have to carry insurance.
Right.
The requirement's gone.
Yeah.
And elderly couples, families, the longer you've been in that house, the longer it's been paid off, and you don't have that requirement.
Yeah.
Expenses pile up, the home insurance. I've talked to a few different people out there about their insurance situation, and they just let it lapse.
Right.
And just hope nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
And
I think at Amory, Mississippi, is a really cool story. I'm so glad we got to help this family. It was a black family, just incredible people. Their house was actually given to them. What was like, I don't know, probably 50 or 60 years ago by another family that lived adjacent to them, but insurance wasn't required because the house was given to them. They didn't have a mortgage or anything like that. And this gigantic sweet gum split the house in two, and it went over, and literally went over. I'll throw a picture up, whatever, but split the house in two basically, and they could not get to any of their possessions in the back of the house.
Remember the door, it had shifted the house enough that the door frame, the post and lintel on the door was like ajar, and the door was stuck.
Yeah, it couldn't
so
even
the
get
only
in.
way in was over the top
Oh,
through the hole
man.
from the tree. And
So we got the tree off and everything like that. It took us like a day and a half. It was a really
mud.
big tree. Yeah, a lot of our equipment got stuck and all that good stuff.
yeah.
But they were finally able to get in. But it's just again like
Yeah.
no insurance, and a lot of tree companies. That's kind of what they're after is the insurance payout. Because I mean, in storm situations, that's the best return.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
investment is charging the insurance company.
Trees falling and killing people is like so common in the Southeast.
Oh,
too.
it is,
It's
yeah.
horrible.
And it's like not even you have like a bird fart thunderstorm
It is.
kill somebody.
It is. It rained for one day
Right.
before of rain, and then you hear someone, tree fell on someone's car and killed. Jeez.
On a blue sky day, like a windy day, the day
5
after
mile an
the-
hour gusts. There was a wake low that came through not too long
Right.
ago, and I was in Duluth, and half the tree just came
Yeah.
right off.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane. Yeah,
crazy,
trees are. It's funny. My wife is like terrified of our trees. We have a really big trees at our house.
Now that you know about
Yes.
I would be too. Yeah.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like we see all the
Yeah.
time what trees do.
Yeah.
And you have
homes.
trees. Those trees are in a creek,
Yeah,
like
creek
a
bed,
low-lying
Oh,
creek bed.
I wouldn't trust
Which,
them.
I know,
if
right?
you saw what we saw in South Carolina, like that's a whole nother thing. But creek bed trees are the worst trees for wind after it's been raining.
Right,
Yeah.
shallow roots and all that good stuff. But I keep an eye on them.
Yeah.
Certified
You
arborist
can
here.
keep an eye
Yeah.
on
Just
them all
kidding,
day,
no.
man.
Just kidding.
You can keep an eye on them.
All right, all the way to the ground.
You have like an
Way to
extra
ground.
sense if one starts like
Yeah.
moving too much.
Take that down. No. But yeah, so I know you recently just got a new job, right?
Yeah, I
Radar
did.
Omega.
Radar Omega. I love it so much.
That's
I really
cool.
feel like since I started YouTube, things have just been kind of going exponentially for me, and I feel very blessed and fortunate that has been the case. And I did a couple different things before, and they were good opportunities, but Radar Omega it fits, it works. And
cool.
the team, I wish everyone knew the team that I work with. It's 3 other meteorologists that I work on this team with. The most brilliant, hardworking, caring, genuine, funniest 3 people I've ever worked with. And I feel so lucky to be a part of a team with them. I could just gush about them all day.
That's awesome. Though.
It's a great group of people, and they're so genuine and they care so much. And I feel really proud to be part of the team. I feel like, YouTube is fine, but I always considered it more of a vessel for me to be able to do other things that I care about, like charity work. It's a vessel to be able to donate money when I have the opportunity to through 2 storms, or, to be able to work at Radar Omega where I feel like I actually have more of an impact and can do things that I personally view as a more tangible way to give back to the
Right.
community. So, great group of people.
That's all.
And they're here in Georgia too.
Yeah, they're like close. They're like coming, right? Is where they're up and coming
it's-
somewhere over there.
It's closer to Dahlonega, Silver City. If you guys,
Okay. Yeah. That's so cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I've never had the opportunity to meet Don. Maybe one day.
You've got to
though,
meet. Yeah, Don's great.
That'd be cool.
The whole
'Cause,
team's great. You should.
use Radar Omega.
We should get you out there at the office sometime. Everyone is
Yeah, I'd love
a
to.
wonderful group of people.
Yeah.
Well, we watch the little weather camera all the time.
Yeah,
Great weather cameras.
The one that's up on
Yeah.
their building.
Yeah.
Right.
I watch that one a lot.
Yeah, I use Radar Omega.
I have a lot of friends that live and having worked in Cumming for a long time. I have a lot of friends that live up that way. So
Yeah.
I'm like, the storms are coming. Different cameras I'm checking
Man,
on Radar
yeah.
Omega. Like,
We never get the really juicy, no, and I'm grateful for this, but we
Right.
never get the juicy stuff. It's always like the overnight linear,
Right.
the Cape's
The
gone.
grunge, yeah.
it's too far north.
This kind of comes through a little lightning fest. Yeah.
Right. We have that. We're bad about depending on your perspective. The cold air
The
damming.
wedge.
That
the
we
cold
always
wedge.
have. Like
Every time I'll see, I'll look at the METARs and I'm like, yes, the
yeah,
cold wedge.
we got the
holding
stable
through.
air sitting here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does your day to day look like at Radar Omega? So
I'm part of the operations team.
Okay.
So it's a lot of social media and a lot of like the back end work that we do for different projects and things that are going on the team.
Awesome.
So not the most exciting thing in the world.
No, it's great. It's cool, though.
It's exciting to me.
Right.
I'll say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
You are helping people who are helping people.
Right.
When you
hope
think
so.
about it.
I hope so. But it's always really fun. Not fun. It's always interesting on big sphere weather days because we're all together all day, watching coverage, doing everything together.
Yeah.
Hurricanes, the same thing. So great team to be a part
That's
of.
kind of like I get I obviously don't like the impacts of severe weather.
Yeah.
It's like a double-edged sword,
Yes.
right? Like as a storm chaser, someone who's like kind of crazy about the weather,
Yeah.
the anticipation for a severe weather day, like we're looking at Tuesday right now, and possibly Wednesday, like the anticipation, like it is an excitement about it, right? You know, obviously you hope nothing happens, but just the whole time from leading up, all the chatter on the social media pages, you know, and everything leading up to it, and then the day of watching the radar, watching Storm Chaser feed, you know,
it's
all
a
that
lot.
stuff.
It's something to be excited, and whether excited is like nervous excitement or whatever kind of excitement it is, it's exciting to be part of that and to feel like something might happen. Which reminds me, I was talking with Trey Greenwood the other day from Convective Chronicles.
Yeah.
I have a project going on with him and Gabriel from Chaser Chat Now. I was talking to him and I asked him a question that I want to ask you guys, which is, so we love meteorology. It's very science-based, right? Do you ever get intuitions about days like the Mayfield Day, for example? A lot of people had a sort of intuition about that being a big day. I myself did as well. I don't feel it very often, but I'm always curious for people who are sort of in STEM or in science who know meteorology, and there's this intersection between science and then having a gut feeling. So do you guys get gut feelings like that? And how much value do you hold in that gut feeling? Well, you're a chaser, so how much value do you place in that sort of gut feeling?
I'm kind of bad about second guessing myself too. Sometimes, like when it comes to stuff like that, I will say probably the biggest gut feeling I ever had was the El Reno tornado, because it was our last day of the chasecation or whatever. Is our last day. We were really contemplating leaving, and we just woke up that morning and felt kind of just uneasy in the spirit, you know, like it was just like, I don't know, man, today's
something feels
just something feels off, you know. And I remember walking outside. Actually, I think I have this on film because I was talking to Jared Stevenson, who was on one of our previous episodes, because we were chasing together. We walked out of the hotel room, and I was filming, and we were looking at the low level jet, you know, screaming across Oklahoma's like low stratus clouds, you know, just sop full of moisture. And Jared even, I think, made a comment along those lines of like, man, today just feels like it's gonna be a bad day, you know. And I think I'm probably similar to you. I don't have it like all the time. You know, it's not every. I probably don't even have it every year. It's probably, you know, every couple of years I'll have a feel. Like Helene, I had a feeling about Helene.
We talked about that.
Just that it was going to be, I felt like, even, I've said this a couple of times after the fact, but even beforehand, I kind of felt like, I was like, this is going to be like our generation's Katrina.
Interesting.
You said that.
I love the episode y'all did on that. It's such a good comparison to sort of talk about a modern day Katrina in terms of the aftermath and the long lasting implications that it has for a lot of times poor areas like Katrina. It just why does it have to happen in those areas?
Right.
I hate that.
It'd be interesting to know like what, you know, like what triggers, maybe like what triggers those feelings, and if it's like, is there something that we notice almost like subconsciously about the setup or something?
That's exactly
you
what
know,
Trey Greenwood and Gabriel both said. Because we were doing like a Q&A thing. And they both said the same thing. Gabriel said, I think it's the culmination of all of our lived experience subconsciously. And Trey said the same thing. You know, you have the fundamental understanding of meteorology for some people. And at the back of your mind, all that culmination, your experience, that's where you get that instinct
it's
feeling
their
from.
model.
It's not random.
It's their weather model, because all the models are run based on historical data. This is their model playing out, going, all right, well, I've seen something like this on this day, you know, and this feels like that. And then before they know it, they're like, something big's about to happen.
Well, you're an arborist, so I mean, seeing like the high risk back to back there in the mountains, essentially, for a lot of those areas, I'm sure that probably raised some red flags for you too.
For sure, absolutely. And I think even outside of weather, you know, you bring up the tree aspect of it. I get that feeling occasionally on certain like work orders that we're on. Like you come up to a certain tree and you're like, man, this one's going to try to kill us. You know, this one's going to try to kill us.
Last week we said no to 2 families that you looked at them and you're like, this is out. If we could, we could try to do this, but we don't. It would test every little aspect of what we are capable of.
Well, I'm glad y'all listened to that gut feeling. It's very important.
There's like it's a hard and disaster response. I think in a lot of things, but we all kind of get upset with ourselves when we have to say no to somebody, because it's like an internal, like, oh, we can handle this, or like kind of a little bit of ego, but there is absolutely no room for ego in tree work because it's like just, it's too risky. So,
well, the same thing is with weather,
right?
That's true.
It's too dangerous for ego.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, Mother Nature is the ultimate humbler. I think that's what's so wonderful. It makes you feel so small.
Right.
You're helpless in many ways. You're just you're there, and Mother Nature is going to do what it's going to do.
It's not down.
And it's been doing it
countlessly,
endlessly,
right?
Forever.
Doesn't matter your social status, your ethnicity. Like
it really doesn't.
What county you live in, whatever. I mean, it's
anybody can get it.
It levels the playing field.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember 1994, maybe. All right, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it was the year before. Oh, never mind. I'm not going to say what that was the year before. 1994. Tornado hit Germantown, Tennessee, which is where I lived in Germantown, which was outside of Memphis. A couple of tornadoes. I dug down the Instagram rabbit hole on Memphis tornadoes the other day.
It's a hot spot.
And it's weird because, like, I don't remember a lot of them.
Yeah,
I remember getting in the closet, but I don't, to hide from them. But one hit. It was right after Thanksgiving. I think it was November 27th, 1994, and decimated like this really brand new, because Memphis's suburbs have always just kind of shot eastward. So we were in like the old part of German, like the very first part of the suburbs,
Yeah.
And like this was like 3 miles out from where I lived, decimating massive like 6-bedroom homes.
Oh, geez.
Decimating them. And just thinking, well, it's not always the low income or the the down and out areas of town. It's a great equalizer.
I would say it draws a line, and whatever's in that line.
Yeah, and there were people killed in that tornado that just did, and the warnings. New area, siren wasn't in the right spot, or wasn't even erected yet. And this was a new development area of town, and so kind of gets to that whole idea of like the warning systems, and like they didn't know what was coming.
You had a video, 2 videos, kind of
super
like back to back, like kind of on that topic. We were talking about that. I think one of and you can speak to this too, like from what you've read and everything. I would say 90% of the people that we talk to after a tornado say, hey, we had no warning. And you're like, are you sure?
Did you?
It's like, but it's like, but I do think that sometimes I would be willing to bet that most of those people did hear talk about severe weather or something like that. But I think a lot of people, though, when something, traumatic like that happens, you think you just get blinders on, and you're like, it can't hit. It just hit without warning.
There's something to say, I think, from a lot of the studies. I think every person is an individual, and every individual reacts differently to a different number of stimuli. But I think one of the big factors is people genuinely just think it's not going to happen to them.
Yeah. Right.
So
this will never happen to me.
Yeah, this would never happen to me. That's definitely part of it. I'm sure a lot of people change their mind after going through a severe weather event or sheltering.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I'm so interested in that because there's a lot of recent studies that I just did videos on about how residents of the Southeast are, they're not really complacent, and they actually are willing and do shelter. And they had some recent science to back that up. But I also know that that's not for every person either. I know that there's plenty of people out there that don't. But it's also contingent upon whether or not they perceive themselves as having gotten a warning. So maybe they say they didn't get a warning, they didn't hear a siren, their phone, they don't have WAs on their phone active. Right. There's a number of things that they could have genuinely felt like they didn't get a warning. But how do you fix those problems? You can't change every single person's mind.
No. I mean, you can even give somebody a weather radio, but they plug it in and get it tuned to the frequency. It's like...
I think what I found most fascinating at the end of it, though, because at the end of the day, every single person's going to react how they're going to react. Bottom line, you can't really force people to listen at the end of the day. But it was one of the studies that I loved the most was saying that reducing the false alarm tornado warning rates is not a magic bullet.
No.
If you get if you get the accuracy rate up, you get the false alarm rate down. That's not the magic bullet to saving lives. What's going to save lives is giving people in rural Alabama access to tornado shelters, people in Albany, Georgia, access to tornado shelters that live in mobile homes.
Right.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Serving those communities, educating those communities. And a lot of people are educated. That's what's frustrating too. Is a lot of people know what to do during a tornado if they live in a mobile home. They know they're not supposed to be there, but they can't get to a shelter. Yeah. There's not one anywhere near them. They genuinely don't know where they would go that's safe, or they might have a disability. I mean, there's so many different factors as to why they might even be aware of what's happening, get the tornado warning, and then I live in a mobile home. Where am I supposed to go?
So I can't get in the car either. Yeah. You know, it's like no one. I wouldn't be willing to bet no one wants to risk it in a ditch
at night.
No. Like I say, like get out of the car, lay in a ditch.
I always think about that. Do you think people would actually do that? Because
I can't imagine.
I would never.
No, that's like the last thing.
What?
Yeah, you know the whole thing. It's like you're not supposed to be in a mobile home. You're not supposed to be in a car during a tornado. The best place to be if you don't have any access to any kind of shelter is to lay flat in a ditch.
Or wait, I thought it was that you're supposed to get up under the overpass.
Oh gosh, don't open up that.
I was like, hold on, stop.
Right.
Sorry, that was a clickbait.
No, that's right.
No, but no, I heard that growing up.
I wonder if anybody's actually done that.
I don't know.
You think there's someone out there that's really been like, all right, I gotta do this.
Chat, drop in the comments.
Yeah. Somebody out there.
No, I remember as a kid driving through Missouri. And probably the scariest weather day of my life. I don't even know what happened or if anything happened. I just know the sky turned pitch black.
Yeah.
Right over my head in the back of a station wagon. I could sense my parents freaking out, kind of like, we're stuck out here. We're driving from Memphis to St. Louis, somewhere in rural Missouri, and pulled over at a gas station, hailstorm, whatever. But just that, like, I don't know how to explain it, like that absolute kind of panic of like, what's about to happen?
Yeah,
what's going on?
Yeah, being a sitting duck, I think, is one thing that really sits with me like horribly. Like, oh, I'm waiting for this thing maybe to come to me, and I'm sitting here.
And in that moment, pulling into a gas station under a awning seemed like the right idea and probably the best option for my dad.
Right.
And I remember once them pulling under an underpass in the rain, which I just cuss those people so hard now when I'm driving down the interstate. I'm like, get out of there.
Yeah.
I think I would love, hopefully in the future, to just, I don't even think, I think in some ways it's about education, but I think a lot of the times, like, we're not giving people enough credit for being like, informed. Like, people are informed, generally speaking. They know what's going on.
I mean, we're the most informed generation.
Yeah. They just don't have access to shelter, which is really sad, and it's very community based.
Right.
You know, how do you advocate for every community to have shelters? It's such a big problem. You know?
I think there could be maybe someone's listening to this who will get inspired by this. I think, and I've thought about this before, there's an entire nonprofit charity that could be developed, if it's not already, dedicated, and the mission statement, the vision could be, the organization will exist until every community has access to a safe shelter in tornado prone areas. Yeah.
There's a guy on Twitter, Dr. Craig Sisson.
Yeah, he has all the tornado shelter maps
of all the tornado shelters, but you'll notice there's a pretty stark cutoff in Alabama, Georgia.
Yeah.
Not
huge gap.
Yeah. Nothing going on in Georgia. I understand we're not as tornado prone for violent tornadoes as there, but at the same time, you're onto something. There's got to be there's got to be a way, because if you go to a community in southern Alabama, you go to the local government, whatever, $10,000, $15,000 can protect the people of your community
for sure,
for decades.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean,
the return on
literally
investment's
save their
pretty
lives.
good. Yeah. It's pretty low maintenance too. I mean, like, you could, even above ground shelters, like pretty easy to maintain, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe
there's businesses that have sought to create storm shelters.
Yeah.
Right. I think it'd be awesome if somebody, would be willing to fundraise and have those, pay the companies that build these to install them, and that could be the whole entire model, for the charity. I don't know. Just thoughts.
Maybe in the future that'll come to fruition. I really hope so.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That would be really
the
cool.
opposite of this, I mean, talk about the need for warning and the idea of like, well, I didn't hear the warning, or this won't happen to me, but Is there a sense, and maybe you have a good idea around this, of warning fatigue?
Yeah.
Like people are like, it's just another tornado warning. It's not going to happen. Yeah. And I think that goes along with, it's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
But like, I sense that there's a really bad weather, like fatigue
complacency
around it. Yeah.
I'm conflicted. I feel both sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always had the perception that there's a fatigue as well. I've always felt like residents of the Southeast are a little bit more on the complacent side. And that's as a lifelong Southerner myself and you guys as well. There's this sense of complacency that I think there's a perception of it. But I've been doing a lot of reading about recent, like 2022 studies that kind of is trying to
like poke holes in that. I don't know.
poke holes in that.
Yeah.
And to really show that residents of the Southeast specifically, not the Plains or anywhere else, residents of the Southeast, they're aware. They're generally educated about tornadoes and what's going on and forecasts. And they try to shelter, or they do shelter, even if they have multiple tornado warnings. The problem is they don't know where to go. They don't have anywhere to go.
Right.
But that's not to say that the cry wolf effect doesn't exist. That's not to say that tornado complacency doesn't exist.
Right.
But I think that one of the things I personally think is that people in the Southeast, we go through hurricanes, we go through QLCS, we go through discrete mode storms. Yep. There's so many different real lived experiences that these people have that they know when it's time, that it's time and this is happening. But I feel conflicted because I do know that there's still some people out there that are complacent.
So we know some people personally. And I guess like sometimes when we think of, when we have personal friends or family that kind of act that way, it's kind of hard not to think that everybody doesn't act that way.
I agree.
You know? So.
You know what? I kind of have the idea because this is like stuff I've recently been stewing on since I've been reading about it. I kind of think that people are a little bit more complacent when we've got these events. Like Georgia's a good example. We get tornado warnings sometimes. A lot of times they don't materialize. And that's just the truth. I think it's 74% of tornado warnings don't materialize in a tornado.
Thank God.
Thank God.
Right?
Could you imagine?
And so I think when people get those warnings, we kind of know. But I don't know. I have the idea that when it's really real, I think a lot of these people know what's up.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain that scientifically.
That Southern intuition,
I feel like
we just kind of know.
Intuition that when something's up, like if it's your family or your family or friends, whoever.
Right.
I feel like when it's time,
something's off with this.
I'm hoping that we know.
Yeah.
Right. It's that low frequency rumble. You know what I mean?
I have no way to back that up, but it's so interesting. I've been stewing on it recently for like the past couple weeks, especially.
I mean, I read the tornado warning. Some people don't. Some people just hear tornado warning and they're like, here comes the EF5 that's going to take me.
Yeah. That's dirty.
Off this
that's
planet.
Good stuff. Yeah.
But no, you have to read them because if I read severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado or radar indicated rotation.
Yeah.
Right. Or observed.
Tornado observed.
We
so
could
many
go
of those.
so far with that.
Right.
They're all wrapped in the same red bubble, though. And that's, I think, one of the things that gets people is like sometimes a tornado warning does not mean that a tornado has touched the ground. Doesn't mean even a funnel cloud's come out of the sky. It doesn't mean any of that.
Right.
Just means
the indications
conditions are favorable for a tornado. And I know that there's like the PDS and there's tornado emergencies, but part of me is like, can we get some of the clarity around the way we talk about it?
That's a great point. If we could get people up to at least having the understanding of the difference between indicated and observed, PDS, and then TORI, that would go a really long way.
Yeah, it could.
Because TORI, if anybody knew what that was, they're going to find their safe zone immediately. Whether that's a different siren that's blaring, whether that's a different warning that's getting sent to your phone, versus, okay, I know I might be the victim of a tornado there's at this point maybe a 25% chance under this tornado warning. And those are the ones that I think are causing what I feel is a little bit of complacency.
I would agree,
just some of the another tornado warning in Cherokee County, and I read it and I'm like,
Yeah.
chances are pretty slim. I'm going
Yeah.
to be a little more worried about the severe thunderstorm
Yeah.
warning that
Right.
you know that I've got right now,
Yeah.
as opposed to
That's so interesting. But you know what? It really excites me is that we're in such a technologically advanced period now, especially with sort of AI coming into weather a little bit too.
Right.
Like those, like NATOcast is a great
Yeah,
example.
yeah. Was it Stormcast? I forgot the guy's name, but he
Andrew?
Yes.
Yeah. Stormnet.
Stormnet.
Yes.
Dang it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're so incredible, right? And
Yeah.
I'm so excited to see the next 10, 15, 20 years of progression because we've got Cameron Nixon's on our side now
Right,
doing
right.
like incredible research.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see what all of this conversation looks like in even 10 years from now.
Yeah,
I feel
for sure.
And there's so many brilliant social scientists too that are out there that are working to improve messaging, and they just redid some mesoscale discussion stuff as well to include like specific threats. If it's for tornadoes, they have like a did you see that? You know what I'm talking about, the wind speed stuff?
Yeah.
That's great. I can't wait to see that in another 10 years.
Right. And I saw that they were like a similar kind of like the tropical storm probability, like wind speed probability. It's like kind of the same thing that they're applying to tornado polygons, where it's like, you know, your percentage of impact, chance of impact.
Well, you think about Helene. That's the thing that gets me is I like, you know, there was a lot of warning for potential flash flooding for these things. But, you know, I particularly think about South Carolina and Georgia. I was reading a little bit about just like the power outages in South Carolina, over 13 million people at one point.
Golly bum.
Like
was
some
insane
amount of people out of power during Helene in South Carolina. Like double what was out of power in Tennessee, East Tennessee, Western North Carolina. But that sent me down a little rabbit hole, getting into talking a little bit about how we watch the eye of the hurricane on the, you know, it's just kind of like been our trained idea. You know, we watch a little bit of the, it could go this way or it could go this way. But where are we talking about like the outer band's potential effects and like letting people know what could be coming? Because the message I heard responding to these storms in Georgia is like, we didn't know it was going to be this bad. Right. We saw the eye going west. I'm like, well, no, you're on the wrong side of the eye, you know, but they don't know.
They had the eye coming into like Atlanta.
Downtown Atlanta, like right over
cow.
Cherokee County.
Yes.
I mean, we had the basement set up and everything, but you know, it's that's the hard thing is I know there's a lot of discussion at the National Hurricane Center about impact driven, you know, like categorization of storms. You know, it's like we focus on Cat 5 a lot, right? Cat 4, Cat 5, based on wind speeds, but then you have like Tropical Storm Imelda, or, you know, even
Katrina was a Cat 3 at landfall.
Right, exactly.
Was, you know.
So it's like, you know, kind of on as far as like mind-blowing storms go, like that's kind of mid grade, you know. It's like, it's a Cat 3, you know, but then you have like over 1,900 people perish from flooding, you know.
And isn't
like,
water the thing?
I think it was around that, wasn't it? Like 1,900, something around there, in New Orleans, or well, total, but I think.
What's Helene at? Does anyone
Oh
know?
gosh, it was over. Jeez,
It's over 1,000.
I don't know if it's.
Hundreds?
I don't know if it's out. I know. I don't know. That's a good question.
I'll have to
go
back.
back.
It
and
may
look.
be still growing.
That's possible. There might be people. They were saying there's people. I don't know how true it is. People that were not on like the census data.
Yeah, I believe that.
That perished, like up there, you know, in the Appalachia areas. Yeah, they just weren't even on the census, and so like we might not ever know how many people actually.
I think that
away.
was the thing that really broke my heart. Was just like I heard in one video the word holler, and I went, oh no. Yeah. Like that was the moment I like, holy crap,
the Appalachian
there's
folks.
So many people that live in the
Tons
Appalachians who aren't registered in
anything.
Like the census people aren't driving. Like you don't go down the road to the holler.
No.
You know, like
that's hard to get to. I mean, hard for people to help them, hard for them to get out.
Right.
I mean, and it's a lot of older folks in Appalachia.
Right.
I mean, that you know, may or may not be capable of really
doing anything.
Anything.
Right.
Yeah, that's
terrible.
I believe probably I think there's unfortunately a lot more people that perish in Helene than we'll ever know.
Man.
I'm sure. That's sad.
Heartbreaking.
It is. So tell us I've actually, it's just for me too. I want to know more about like Two Storms and like
sure.
kind of, what your vision for that is and how that came to be. I know a little bit, but
Well, it's still growing. So the image started with the idea that I just really love talking about mental health within the weather space. That comes from me having intense fear of storms. So before the storm and then after, I love talking about PTSD and people who really struggle for years and months after these severe weather events. So I always knew I wanted to like talk about it and raise awareness and donate in a way. And so Two Storms was kind of derived from that vision. And so it's a small business. We sell severe weather apparel, but again, the idea is always to bring awareness to severe weather safety, to mental health awareness before the storm, talking about storm anxiety and after, and then just using it as a vessel to kind of donate to charity.
Right.
Transparently, I don't think that Two Storms is meant to be an apparel business. I don't think it's meant to be a business in that way at all.
Right.
I really see Two Storms as something else entirely that's way more charity focused. I just don't know what that is yet.
Right.
But I would love to take it in that direction. I just
almost like a storm specific crisis counseling or something.
Something. It's definitely not in its final vision. But
that's cool.
But I love it so far. I love being able. I had no idea that so many other people were just like terrified of storms like me. On the day of, like I'm like shaking in my boots.
Right.
But it was so empowering for me, like I said, to be able to learn about severe weather ingredients and what makes one severe weather day, a linear event, maybe a little bit different from a discrete cell event.
Right.
And it just empowered me so much and made me feel so much better that I really wanted to share that with other people. And and from making the documentaries on YouTube, I learned so much more about PTSD and how much more people suffered. There's one person from Joplin that I will always think about that became an amputee that just had horrible, horrible PTSD that I watched a few interviews of. And that person will stick with me forever.
Yeah.
And those are the people that I think about that I want to contribute to after the storm.
Right.
So we donate to NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Team Rubicon, and Marco Patriots. They're out there feeding people after too.
Them.
So awesome. They're really cool. I don't know why I don't have you guys on my thing. And I thought about this like a couple months ago too. It's gonna add it on there.
That's really amazing because it's something people don't think about.
I wish
go
they
back
did.
to the conversation about the news cycle.
Yeah.
Right.
And you think about like once upon a time, you watch your local weather, local news, you're watching your, whether you got the rabbit ears or early cable, still getting your network TV. But like that was where you went to go get all your news. And sometimes there were feel good stories.
Yeah.
Even, and maybe sometimes it was like a follow up on something that happened. Yeah. That doesn't exist in today's news cycle as much.
It's very quick. It's very...
It's on to the next hot raging topic.
Yeah.
Like whatever, we can get everybody mad about it.
Yeah.
And so I think that like what we see a lot is these are hurting people. Yeah. And whether they were, like you said, anxious before the storm, storm happened, then they're affected and they're hurting.
They're traumatized
really
people.
badly.
Yeah.
And we all know that mental health is a very personal, individual thing. The way I've experienced something could be completely different than the way you do.
Right.
And so everybody processes that so much differently. And I feel like there's just got to be something that can inspire people a year, 2 years, 3 years afterwards when they're still dealing with those effects.
If anything, I don't perceive my work or what I do talking about it as a very tangible difference to these people, right? Like I don't perceive, I would love, if anything that I do, if people could just be more aware that they exist, that these problems exist. To be aware that these people, hey, they're still out there after Helene, they're still suffering. Whether or not people are able to donate or do whatever they can is their prerogative.
Sure.
But just being aware that, first of all, people really suffer before the storm. A lot of hype casting bothers me personally.
Right.
It affects me personally. I know it affects other people too.
Yeah.
Let's just be aware that exists. You're actively hurting people, in my opinion, sometimes.
Right. For sure.
And secondly, after, someone might tear a rotator cuff. They're out of work for years, or they're an amputee, or, they herniate a disc. They can't work. I mean, there's so many different elements. They're traumatized. So if I could even just bring awareness to people thinking about that instead of thinking about the the virality of clips or, oh my God, look at the devastation, look at the pictures, look at the
Right.
drone. You know, it's kind of,
Well, it's a voyeuristic thing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the word. That's
Yeah,
the word
yeah,
I
yeah.
use to
Yeah.
describe it. And we're all guilty of it.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I get on YouTube and I'm like, oh, cool tornado damage
I think
video.
it serves a purpose,
yeah.
but I think as long as we can bring awareness to some of the things that happen after, maybe
Right,
try to
right.
keep them in mind.
It's a whole picture.
Yeah.
A little nuance to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, people get hyper focused on like that
Yeah.
immediate
Mm-hmm.
after.
Yeah.
You know, so
And the immediate aftermath. I mean, I had friends calling me, hey, I'm loading a trailer to go to North Carolina. You want to go? And I'm like, no, I've got somewhere to go. But good on you. Like,
Yeah.
you're not even a disaster response ministry. You're just a guy who said, I'm going to take stuff. And I
Yeah.
know that was a little overwhelming initially, but he called me to say, who do I need to go find
Yeah.
up there and how do I help? And like, I was blown away just most recently by the response to Helene from individual contributors.
Yeah.
Like, you looked at the story that blows my mind is Greg Biffle, the old NASCAR driver,
right.
Oh, cool.
was I don't know if you saw, he was flying supplies from
That's
North
so
Carolina. He had
A helicopter is a little.
he was a
jet?
helicopter pilot. He was
Wow.
one of the helicopter. He was the guy that took the video, if I'm not mistaken.
Uh-huh.
And if I'm wrong, I'm sure I'll get skewered. But there was the family that had the mirror in the field.
Yeah.
That was like, had not seen anybody for days.
Right.
And like the helicopter flew over and,
Spotted
but
him.
he was flying from the Charlotte airport where all the NASCAR
Yeah.
drivers just right by the racetracks, whatever, they were taking supplies and he was flying stuff in and
Wow.
out and then got told to leave, And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you're serious now?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this is a celebrity, celebrity to the Southeast,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
celebrity who's, doing something good for humankind.
Yeah.
And nobody asked him to. He just said,
I feel
I'm
like
going to go
I
help
feel
these
like
people.
maybe, and you guys would be way more of a judge of this. I feel like there almost seemed to be a shift in the way people sort of treat disaster response after Helene. Like it feels like it almost woke people up a little bit to
Very
like
much.
that they can help. That
Yep.
so, regardless of whatever spectrum people are on. Sometimes people don't get the help that they need, and that's not new to
Right.
people.
That's not
Us
new.
in the community. This has been a long time thing.
Oh yeah.
And people need help, and the best way a lot of times they get help is by other people
Yeah.
helping them. It seems like there was kind of a shift in awareness
Huge
with
shift.
Helene.
Yep.
So you guys would be able to speak to that more than me, but that's how it felt like to
Right.
me. People just kind of seeing that more like we can help these people
Yep.
more than
We definitely
sometimes
saw
the government
that.
can. That's again, that goes all the way back to Katrina.
Right. I think
know.
Katrina was a defining storm
Yeah.
in how disaster response kind of,
Failed
flourished
them.
from that. And Helene is another example. I mean, we've gotten tons of inquiries from other churches and groups wanting to start their own
That's so
disaster
cool.
response,
That's so cool.
like
Yep.
charity or ministry. And like, how do we go about
Yeah.
that? It's like, well, we might not be the best people to ask, but, but we're willing to help any way we can.
Well, we
but-
made all the mistakes, so we can help you down next
That's
time.
right.
Right.
That's
So
right.
there's there's definitely a big shift for
that's
sure.
good.
So I
I
hope the
love that.
momentum stays, because just like I don't same like 9/11, those type of
Yeah.
big impact events, you have a moment of, just like unity and like we're
Yeah.
going to do this, kind of thing. And then it like feathers off,
Yeah.
and so hopefully
I
we
hope
can,
it stays too.
Yeah. Keep bringing.
I hope so.
You don't have to be full time.
No, we're
Like,
doing it
it-
part time.
it's-
We're doing it part time.
Like, you can start doing because that's what I think happens is people go, oh, well, I helped. But now all the people that just do it all the time, they'll
Right.
keep it going,
Yeah.
and it'll get the problem will get solved. But you can do this in a weekend, a year.
Right.
Like, if I could just tell every friend of mine, I could use you for one weekend a year.
Volunteer for
Just
a couple
volunteer
days. Yeah.
in some way.
Yeah.
That impacts
Yeah.
people
right.
in a positive direction. I think that, if you could that's what I hope this storm brings.
Right.
Like the aftermath of Helene.
Well, that's why I love
is-
what you guys do so much is because, again, I see myself as like not having a big impact at all. You guys do the tangible, actual, physical, helping people out. And I think like since I had worked with Ryan briefly before, seeing how many people just wanted to throw their money
Right.
to help people out
Right.
because Ryan was essentially offering this kind of a niche because people didn't want to donate to FEMA Red Cross because they couldn't see where their money was going specifically, and that's an understandable thing.
It's diluted a little bit just because it's a huge organization. Right?
So people really love. That's why I love Team Rubicon. They're still big, but they're smaller than some other.
Right. Yeah,
they're really good at advertising.
Yeah, they are.
They are.
Did you see the billboards in Atlanta? Like when you drive through the intersection and all of a sudden there's a Team Rubicon. You're like, they're tracking my phone.
Yeah, right.
Google's tracking my phone.
But you guys, people can donate to y'all, and y'all are right out there. People can see where their money's going, and people really love that. Yeah. People love being able to see their charity going directly to the source. And I think Helene especially, that's super important after Helene.
Absolutely.
It's important. I mean, you mentioned the Red Cross, and all of these are great organizations and wonderful to help. But the point of being able to see that on the ground and see what's being done, and just know that there's room in the world for the big organizations and the small organizations.
Yes, agreed. Yeah.
Like not every we've talked about this for years. Like we don't want to be big.
Yeah,
like
our goal is to stay small.
We're not trying to be the next Team Rubicon or and amazing work.
Yeah,
that's not our mission. We're not
Y'all
trying
have
to
your
grow.
own purpose as well,
and you do. I mean, you think about what you're doing, focusing attention to the mental health of victims of natural disasters. Yeah. That's important work. There's important work to be done there.
Oh, for sure. I think that portion, like, we're not the only people that do tree care after tornadoes. We're not the only people that, like clear debris and stuff. But I do feel like the mental health side is something that's has barely even been tapped into. And I think that's huge. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're supposed to have JP on at some point. JP is one of our friends who went through the Newnan tornado. Incredible story. I mean, his story is like, man, you get chills thinking about it. He's got 2 kids and a wife, and they were literally, I mean, the core of that tornado went right behind their house.
Oh man.
Total devastation behind their house. But he, for a long time after that, struggled really bad with anxiety. Never had panic attacks in his life.
Yeah.
And then after this tornado, he was like, man, and he's going to at some point come on and talk about.
That'd be great.
Before and after.
Great episode. Yeah.
So. But it's super important because I know he felt like, and he'll probably speak to this, that he kind of felt alone in the fact that he was suffering from, PTSD after a tornado. It's like, are there community groups for people that are suffering specific, storm recovery groups?
It's a very specific thing.
Right.
Yeah. There's even, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, well, in Newnan, you would think there would be at this point.
Right.
Or he could start one.
Yeah.
I, even for storm chasers, I've talked to a couple storm chasers that were traumatized, especially after Rolling Fork. That was a big thing where people came across things that it's part of why I wouldn't want to storm chase big stuff like that. That for me, that would be like, I can't. Yeah. I can't mentally handle that. And I've talked to storm chasers that couldn't mentally handle it, and now they're dealing with that. And I think there's probably some ego in the storm chasing community that makes them feel like they need to be strong and ready to chase and do all these things, but maybe they should, it's okay to be traumatized by seeing something horrible and be vulnerable.
Because vulnerability helps a lot of people. Yeah. Instead of like trying to be macho about it.
Yeah.
Like Daniel. But
I was literally thinking at that moment about vulnerability in what we did. Yeah, of course. We make a lot of fun of each other. That's what keeps our friendship strong. But it's true. Like it's one of those things. I mean, there have been times where I couldn't go to take a trip with us. Like I've got a job, this isn't my job, but and it's like, I have to be willing to say, it's not my time right now. It's Warren's time. He's got a crew, great group of guys. If I can't go, I'm really thankful that Joe and Billy and Bob, whoever's going can go. Yeah. Because if I were there, I'm taking up a spot that one. So it's like, you really like to think about, like, you're talking about the storm chasers, like, there's thousands of them on the road, guys. Yeah, it's okay if you sit this one out.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, sit this one out if you need the help that you need, because sometimes you just need the help to reset and just know
also,
that,
it's just a grueling driving.
That's a grind. Yeah.
I don't miss that part.
Busting, maybe not. Right. Maybe see a tornado. Maybe drove 500 miles for nothing.
I've done that.
Drive back.
Yeah, took my wife on our first storm chase.
Did you?
Drove to Arkansas. This was like 2017. Actually met up with Brandon Kopic. It was kind of funny that we both stayed at the same hotel. And it was a moderate risk day.
All I can think about is like that movie from the 90s, the Roach Motel movie.
We've been in
like
some of
you
those.
were probably staying in like...
we're in a Hilton, but no, but it was like a moderate risk day, 15% hatched. It talks about going high, like, man, trough geometry was spectacular. Like, this is going to be a big day, you know. Nothing. I mean, it was like grunge rain shower. It was like garden showers the whole day. Man. And she was like,
this is it.
This is dumb.
I was like,
dumb.
Okay. I was like,
She'll
you're
never
right.
go again.
Yeah, you're right. This is dumb. I'm not just like.
And you're trying to impress her the whole time.
Right. I'm going to get a big old Dixie Ripper out here. And, I'm just like,
But you took me on one.
Yeah.
We did get rocked a little bit in a field.
Oh, yeah.
Selma, like outside of Selma.
Outside of Selma.
It was like a straight line wind event more than anything.
We were on
funny.
like a driveway.
You haven't been chasing yet, though, right?
I was just about to say, we founded Storm Chaser Coaching with Trey Greenwood.
Okay. What is
Greenwood
this?
Is the best of the best.
Use him all the time for forecasting.
Gabriel and I call him, so the other person's Gabriel. Gabriel from Chaser Chat, myself, and Trey Greenwood. We call Trey Greenwood the golden goose. We just need our golden goose to lay golden eggs.
Right.
We don't do anything else.
Yeah.
Lay golden eggs. We'll be there to pick them up.
Yeah.
But the idea is, of course, to just have modules and information that that people can use. It's a paid service, of course, that Trey Greenwood is giving you these golden eggs on how to storm chase.
Right.
And he's got like 10, almost 15 years of experience, MS and meteorology.
Right.
Brilliant
Super
guy.
good guy.
That's awesome.
And a great teacher. If I could say anything about Trey, he's such a good teacher. He's great at taking these complex meteorological concepts, breaking them down in a way that someone like myself, who has an arts degree, to understand and to utilize. So bringing me on was the idea to bring this all together, that I, as a beginner storm chaser and someone who has a fear of storms, would take
Guinea
the
pig.
education. We called me the guinea pig, actually.
Guinea pig,
So I'll take all of that information and, empower myself to feel comfortable and confident enough. And I'm huge on safety. I'm huge on education. So for me to trust them, I genuinely trust them with my life.
Yeah.
So that'll be this year, my first storm chases. But of course, it's going to be, I'm not chasing a moderate risk or anything. It'd be like a marginal.
Right, marginal out
Georgia,
there.
get a little shelf cloud, start with that, get comfortable with it, and then just, work my way up a little bit.
Work your way up to mile wide.
I think you just go.
Just get it nocturnal.
I should just go all in.
Once you've had the course, you've taken all the training.
Nocturnal violent.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
Nocturnal high risk, man.
Not because you would be safe and you would be fine because you had all the training. Then you would be
That's
fine.
a really cool concept.
Overcome all the fears at one time.
Yeah.
That's a cool concept, though.
We're so excited about it. We have so many great ideas that we're cooking up, but they're just the best folks out there. And I don't really I don't do sponsorships, and I don't really work with a lot of people, so they're the best.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think just training in general is so important.
Man.
And I mean, you think about storm chasing
skills.
is so cool.
Yeah.
I don't, I make jokes with Warren and my wife kind of sometimes about storm chasers. Like, we love the storm chasers. We watch the storm chasers. But we have a lot of laughs at their expense. And it's like, but there's not like a storm chasing class you can go take, you can just kind of, I'm a storm chaser now.
That's scary, isn't it?
I'm just going to get out there and go do this.
Yeah.
And, and like a lot of other things, you kind of got to get training. So it's good to hear that exists.
No, that's
because
huge.
There's a lot. I mean, we started this and we were joking earlier on our way to lunch. We're just talking about like what idiots we were and like understanding PP. Yeah. There's a picture somewhere of me standing on top of his old ambulance chaser vehicle that we drove.
That was cool, by the way.
To Chattanooga. I had no chaps on, no helmet, no eye protection. Cutting over my shoulder, using the car as a ladder to get to broken branches, and
that's something.
Stupidest thing.
Right.
That's something.
picture looks awesome. Like, I mean, like I have that picture on my phone and I
Right,
don't
right.
show it to anybody, but like
Yeah.
I look at that picture and I'm like, dude, I looked awesome. But no, like,
It's
no.
bad,
The cool factor is
Yeah.
gone when you realize how
Dangerous.
I could have died
That's
easily.
why some of the bigger chasers, it's so important for them to like set a good example because there's
Right.
so many kids that get it. First of all the hobbies you can have as a teenager, that's kind of a wild hobby
It
to
is
have.
super wild.
First of all, because you're a new driver, which is honestly probably one of the most important factors is like
Right.
learning how to be a good driver.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to be
Critical
driving
thinking
a long.
skills.
Yeah. Multitasking skills, driving and doing something, God forbid, you're also trying to do something else at the same time.
Right.
Because that's what teenagers do.
Yeah.
Which is scary. So
Very scary.
there are some good example folks out there.
There are. Absolutely. There
So,
are.
Very important to have them.
Yeah. Like all the storm chasing talk. I'm just going to ask you, how do you feel about the storm chasing bill that's been going around in Oklahoma? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know much about it. I was trying to read up on it over the past couple of days. So I'm not the person at all to like speak
I'm not
accurately.
a storm chaser, so I think
Right.
maybe between both of us, I don't know, maybe we can form a complete
Right.
thought. But
Yeah.
I read it and I was watching Trey did a breakdown of it as well. And the initial bill was kind of proposed as like it's not going to affect the average chaser. It's just going to give extra privileges
I see.
to news crews to get into certain areas was
Right.
my initial understanding of it. But I think it's become a little bit more nefarious than that.
Right.
And I'm always really skeptical with bills like that because they might start the proposition as like,
Right.
oh,
On the
it's not
surface,
going to affect you.
Right.
And then by
right.
the time it ends up getting it, no one
can chase in Oklahoma.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know there were some recent updates to it, like within the past week or so,
Yeah.
where people were a lot more up in arms about it.
Right.
So probably affecting more.
Yeah, I did see some chatter from some older veteran chasers. That
Warren
were,
was
Warren Fadley is
Yes,
like
yeah.
kind of he seems pretty passionate
Yeah.
about
For
not
sure.
not too happy about
Yeah.
that. So yeah, it'll be interesting. We kind of are not really dealing right now, but something that's been proposed in the tree care industry is tree care is one of the most dangerous industries in the entire
I'm
United
sure,
States.
yeah.
Like next to linemen.
Yeah.
It's like, and roofers, it's like, the number one
I
fatality.
learned about underwater welding.
That's a big one.
This
That's a
morning.
big one. That's a bad one
Talk
too.
about a dangerous job.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's no, it's one of the only industries, like trade industries, that doesn't require a license to do the work. So you have like electrical, you need like electrical
Yeah.
license, plumbing, you need
Yeah.
a licensed plumber,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But tree care doesn't have any kind of licensing.
Interesting.
And so there's a big push more recently
license.
to move that direction. So I just find it interesting. It's like the idea behind the licensing
Yeah.
is to drive safety, and it's a good thing. But
Yeah.
like how does that end up actually
How does it get
affecting the
policed?
industry?
And
Yeah.
how do they enforce it? I
Right.
think what's more concerning to me, again, I'm not a storm chaser, but I think what I find more concerning, like in a more objective sense, is not that they would police the average chaser,
Yeah.
but more so that they would allow news crews who are like notoriously bad drivers
Right.
to essentially have a pass to do whatever they want, put these certain lights on their car, and they
Right.
essentially have the same authority as police officers and emergency crews,
Right.
which I'm not entirely opposed to, but I think as a concept, maybe it sounds okay, like, oh, they can do extra things if they need to, but I think in reality, I don't know.
Right.
I think that's more of my concern. It's like
Yeah.
you're enabling some people to just continue
Bad behavior and
bad behavior and having exclusive privileges and doing certain things. And I don't care what anyone says. I think that the news station's going to want that clip.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
They want
That's
the
their
first.
job.
They want the
Right.
first,
And it's
they're
getting
gonna
more
do
competitive.
They're going to do anything they can to get in there
Right.
too. If that's driving crazy, if that's doing whatever, they want to get in there and they want to get the shot
Yeah.
before anyone else can. So I think that's
And
my.
is that shot the one we really want?
I don't know.
Like, is
I sense a.
are we voyeurs? Or do
Yeah,
we just
yeah.
want to see what it
Yeah.
looks like
Yeah.
minute one after a
Right.
tornado strikes a
Yeah.
town? I don't know that any of us should.
I sense a Twisters sequel based on this new Oklahoma bill coming up. You know what I mean?
Twisters sequel.
I mean, they were
Yeah.
kind of right. They had like the good guys and then like the
Right.
bad. They're not in it for science
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
guys. Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Do you know how many times I've sang "Ain't No Love in Oklahoma" in my
Probably.
mind in the last
It's a little too catchy. Yeah.
that whole
That's a good movie.
soundtrack?
We'll see how it
So-
plays out though. I mean, time will tell, I guess.
Yeah.
It's hard to in my mind, it's hard to completely realize what the downstream implications could
Yeah.
be. You know, I don't think we could, think about it hard enough to figure out what does this actually affect,
Yeah.
So maybe it might be something when they put it into practice, it's like, oh, maybe this worked out great, or this is a bad idea. Do we have the ability to reverse it?
Or
I'm not opposed to, like, you brought up a great point about being licensed to do certain dangerous things. It's a
Right.
great point. I'm not opposed to people being licensed or like people who have horrible driving records. Yeah, maybe we don't want them on the road
Right.
in that capacity.
Right.
I'm not opposed to that, but I also just think that it just seems like it's more catered towards news stations being enabled than anything else. But I don't know.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to catch up. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was awesome.
This was super awesome.